Hi guys, Zach the Grexley here, and welcome to my melee gear setup guide. Now, this is so based on the current presets that I have, like in my bank and for my gear. This is everything that you should know, and like I'm going to cover about almost everything in every part of my gear and why I gear them out specifically the way I do. Yeah, and this is this is everything in terms of weapons and armor together and gloves and etc. I'm not going to go over the gloves. I'm just going to go over like the gear and perks, right? So like I'm going to go over all my armor pieces and then all my weapon perks. And the reasons why I have a total of 4 sets of trim masterwork, both custom fit, well, 2 sets of custom fit trim masterwork and then 2 non-sets of custom fit trim masterwork. So I'm about to get into the rest of it, guys. Now, why would you buy both custom fit trimmed and just trim masterwork? Now, you're going to see here in the list, trim masterwork does not degrade in dungeons. Degrades like normal after 100,000 charges of combat. Degrades on Reaper tasks. Degrades on Slayer tasks. Does not require all 5 pieces to use. Custom fit trim masterwork does not degrade in dungeons. Does not degrade on Slayer and Reaper tasks. Degrades twice as slow when you custom fit it. But to custom fit it, you'll need all 5 pieces of trim masterwork, and you have to do this twice. Now, the reason why you would want trim masterwork and custom fit trim masterwork is basically trim masterwork and custom fit both share one thing. They both don't degrade in dungeons. Now, having a permanent dungeon setup that doesn't degrade is very useful, especially for like dungeons like ED2 and ED3 with getting into shenanigans with Undead Slayer and Dragon Slayer in your perk combos. And to back up the information about trim masterwork not degrading and degrading, like from both custom fitting and non-custom fitting, this is the wiki link, or the wiki post, I should say. Trim masterwork will not degrade in elite dungeons. Effect is carried over to custom fitted equipment. So like that's not the only selling point to custom fit your masterwork. This means you can be very creative with your dungeons, of course. Now, starting from so perks and combos on all my sets. Now, starting from left to right, from top to bottom, we're gonna go over my setups for all of my gear, and this is where it's going to make sense. So, dungeons doing trilogy, regular trimmed masterwork. For the top, I have Relentless 5 with Crackling 4, and for the second slot, I have Invigorating 4 with Dragon Slayer. Now, for the legs here, I have Biting 4 with Undead Slayer and Devoted 4 Impatient. Now, just that top and bottom alone will get you through all the bosses and all the creatures in all the dungeons, which is extremely important. And it doesn't degrade, so this is why you wouldn't want a custom fit set for dungeons. Now, mobile is very important in dungeons, which I do acknowledge that. Now, when you are, I always have a leg switch when I'm doing melee dungeons, and that is for specifically mobile with Biting 4 and Devoted 4 and Patient 4. Now, with the top setup here, or the bottom setup, now, I'll get into it a little bit later, because just looking at it, if you do take off your Undead Slayer legs, you won't have effectiveness for undead creatures with mobile on. Now, I'm going to get into this later. At the end of the video. Well, not the end of it, the end of this slide in particular. And on the bottom, I categorize everything into custom fit and regular trimmed, so you wouldn't get confused, because it is a lot of information. Now, bossing outside of dungeons plus Slayer custom fitted. Now, going into our first custom fit set, we have Relentless 5 with Crackling 4 and Invigorating 4 Genocidal. This you can use at any boss. But this is also meant to both tackle bosses and be able to do Slayer and have the best perks for Slayer like possible just on your gear alone. This is also, now going into Devoted 4 and Patient 4, Biting 4 and Demon Slayer. Now, it's a little bit cut off on the bottom there, but Demon Slayer is pretty expensive, Biting 4, but it'll help you with Slayer when you do have demons as a task. So that's why I wanted to have Demon Slayer on my legs with Biting. And it is quite expensive with a Biting 4 variation. For my mobile leg, obviously it's the same as before. Using a mobile leg pretty much for all of these variations, which you do have on a custom fitted leg, which is why you need two custom fitted sets. Now, special bosses and Reaper tasks set custom fitted racks and Greg. So like when it comes to Raxor and Greg, I have a specific setup and gear set up for them because they are quite a bit annoying. Greg not so much, but a Raxor definitely is. So with my top, as you can see here, I have Relentless 5 by itself without crackling because there is reflect mechanics at a Raxor and the mirror back can drop, so you don't want crackling to go off randomly. Well, not randomly, but it will go off if you keep doing damage to a Raxor, and it gets very annoying. And I also have Invigorating 4 with Venom Blood, only because it will just save you a little bit of money over time with anti-poisons, but that's not really the selling point of why you get Venom Blood. I also have it so, like, when I go to Greg, because Greg does... he does... So, Greg Warwick does lower your anti-poison doses throughout... the fight. So like if you drink an anti-poison, he'll like reduce like minutes upon your anti-poison. It gets annoying. So that's why I have Venom Blood on the gear. So then on my legs I have Devoted 4, then Patient 4, and then Biding 4, Demon Slayer as before with the original custom fit set, right? And then with the mobile leg switch, right, on the bottom here, I have Biding 4 mobile and then Devoted 4 and Patient 4. That is really important. And now getting into other switches I have based on combos so far. Now the rest, so so far we've covered about, basically two full sets, and then another top and legs. Now would be three, so it would be 3 tops and 3 legs so far. Now the fourth top and fourth leg, this is where it's for ED3 specific, going back to the first thing I talked about with the first perk over here. I'm going to point to it being Relentless 5 Crackling and Dragon Slayer. Now, if you're doing specifically ED3 and you want to use a mobile switch the entire time, right, you can use a regular trimmed, Masterwork chest with, instead of Invigorating Dragon Slayer, you'd have Invigorating Undead Slayer. So you can camp, because there is a bit of there's a bit of both, there's a lot of undead creatures before and after, like in the dungeons and between the bosses for the mobs. So you do want to use mobile, and you do want to use Undead Slayer at the same time, which is why I put it in here with Relentless 5 and Crackling 4, obviously. Now, when it comes to Melee Telos on P5, I have a clear-headed switch with Turtling 4. Now, this is for red golems and a normal rotation, because you don't want to have Turtling 4 on your defender. You want to have Aftershock 4 E2. This is what I'm going to go over weapon-wise in the next slide, but this is why. And I always, like, for Melee Telos, you are trying to mitigate as much damage as possible before because you are Zerked, so like you want the effects of custom fit trim masterwork. And it does help a lot, that extra 10% reduction or slowed damage. Now moving on to the next slide. Now, weapons list and perks. Now, going from the top left and moving our way to the right, we're going to start with our Noxious Scythe. Now, our Noxious Scythe has Equilibrium 4, Ruthless 3, with Aftershock 4, Precise 2. This is the best in terms of killing mobs in dungeons, etc. Specifically for just only pure AoE damage. And I did talk to Evil Lucario about this specifically, and this is what he runs as well on just the Scythe alone. The rest he probably variates and deviates from. But for the Scythe, I am 100% certain that that is what he runs, and I do think it does the most damage possible. Now, in terms of Pterosaur Maul here, I use Precise 6 Aftershock 1, Aftershock 4 E2. You do not have to get Precise 6 Aftershock 1, however, I just had it on my previous weapon, and I took it off of it, and I just slapped it on my Maul. And then with Aftershock 4 E2, pretty self-explanatory. So the same thing goes with our Zeros Godsword, which is just below our Pterosaur Maul. And moving on to the Shard of Lang. Now, the Shard of Lang is a new T95 weapon that was released. For any main hand weapon in general, you want Precise 6 with Aftershock 1 for when you want to go switch your offhand, so you always have Aftershock 1 all the time. Now, that is important for like when you go to offhand switch constantly for specific bosses. Now moving on to the the Trim Masterwork Spear of Annihilation. Now, the Spear of Annihilation is just specifically a lunging switch, and you use it to cast all of your high damage bleeds. So preferably you always want lunging for dismember with the spear because it's some crazy overall damage throughout your fights. Followed by an aftershock for E2. Just in case you would use it, right? So like you want to keep aftershock stacks all the time and you want to have maximum damage for aftershock, but you shouldn't be using this weapon normally if you have like best of slot gear. As a whole, you'll be using the Shards of Lang mainly like most of the time, or you'll be using the Zeryl's God Sword, right, for cleave, or for cleave you use the Pterosaur Maul, etc., etc. Now, moving on to our defender. Our defender, we have Aftershock for 18, obviously, because when we do have to swap to our defender, we want to, if we are doing some cheesy things at Telos, like, for example, Aftershock 4 is some incredible damage paired up with Equilibrium 2 to help the Revenge rotation that I use. So that's very nice. A flank, this original, so I ended up not posting this correctly. But for the offhand here, you would just have a flanking 4 variant, for the Khopesh. I apologize for that. I actually didn't make a mistake on that, but I do have flanking 4 on this for when I need to use flanking at other bosses. And then I have, for the Silver of Lang down here, the Teeny Get 95 offhand, I have Aftershock 4 E2, which is what you would want on a normal offhand. Now, the niche weapons and what they're used for over here, which is why I have multiples in my bank, is a site specifically for like doing a Raxor and the puddles at Raksha with Ruthless 3 E4. Now, the reason why I don't use Aftershock on this site is both because you don't need, so most of the fight at a Raxor is time gated, so you don't need Aftershock whatsoever. And at 300% enrage, you don't want to be making risks of your Aftershock going off because the reflect damage is incredible at that enrage and it gets really annoying. So I don't use Aftershock on my time-gated weapons like my Scythe. But also, if you go to Natural Instinct on P3 at Raksha before the puddles, you'll find it that you would want to have that 7.5% damage after you kill the puddles, which is why you'd have another Shard of Lang that's died to abuse that 7.5% increased damage with Ruthless 3 equal to 4 Raksha. So like these two will work hand in hand together because of the fact that you want to be using, and that's why back over here we have Aftershock 1. So when we are choosing the Equilibrium 4, right, Ruthless 3, this is why we want Aftershock at the same time on our main hand. Now, I do have another defender as well for Araxor, specifically for both Barricade and the Bridge. Actually, no, just for mobile. My bad. So, like, I do use Barricade sometimes. I don't use my Cade with this, but I use mobile for Darkness Path, right? So you can either have Cade, turtling switch, I mean, on this, or you can have mobile. Etc., etc. Because like of Darkness Path, you want to use a shield at the same time to help reduce the damage from the darkness and be mobile so you can use Bladed Dive a lot, or just to completely the entire way. Actually, moving on. Now, thank you guys for watching. Please follow me on Twitch. I'm Zach the Greg Slayer. I stream Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. time. I appreciate you guys watching my video. This is meant for people that are confused about perks, and I hope to see you guys later. Take care.